Study session for the City Council for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for March 4th, 2024. We have four action items or consideration items on our agenda. Item number one is an amendment to the cooperation agreement between the City of Wheat Ridge and the Wheat Ridge Urban Renewal Authority for the Walmart redevelopment. Item number two is the final design for the green at 38th. Item number three is agreement with Jefferson School District for the development of the green at 38th. And item number four is a resolution in opposition to House Bill 24-1152 ADU policy preemptions. We generally start our study sessions with public comment on agenda items. We have no one signed up to speak in the hall or online, so we will conclude that agenda and go to item number one. And Mr. Goff, I'll go and see if you have a staff presentation on this item.
We do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will give a brief summary, and then I'm going to turn it over to Will Damerth is here with U.S. Retail Partners. They're the owner of the Applewood Village Shopping Center. You all know Steve Art, of course, our Economic Development Manager and Urban Renewal Authority Executive Director. Steve will be here for any questions that you may have. So I'll go ahead and get started. Then again, I'll turn it over to Will, and he's got a presentation for you. See if I can get through this without drinking. So Walmart, you all remember our Walmart, or do you? It's been so long. Pre-COVID, we forgot all about that, right? Walmart left us in 2017, kind of quickly, very last minute, right, Will? It was a surprise to both of us. So they shut down in 2017. So to attract new quality national retail tenants, U.S. Retail Partners, the developer and owner of the shopping center, asked the city and Renewal Wheat Ridge to participate in an agreement to share back a portion of the future property and sales tax on any future redevelopment of the Walmart site from the redevelopment to help redevelop the site. Renewal Wheat Ridge did enter into a redevelopment agreement with the developer in March of 2019 to reimburse them up to $8.4 million in both property tax and sales tax. Most of that was property tax increment. That would help cover a lot of the cost of public improvements required for the redevelopment. We did analyze the project using an outside source to help us analyze this project. They did identify about $10.7 million in public improvements for this project. Those public improvements were summarized in your staff memo. In May of 2019, City Council approved a cooperation agreement with Renewal Wheat Ridge, authorizing the city to share 1 cent of its 3.5 cents from this project for a period of 5 years, up to a maximum of just over $2 million. This cooperation agreement will expire this year. So moving forward another year or two, COVID hit us right when the stores opened. I think they opened, they had to close in the next month, was it almost? So very unanticipated, as you can imagine, the COVID crisis and other economic factors that followed. The actual sales and property tax increments had been significantly less than we modeled. So based on the terms of the original agreement, the developer will likely be reimbursed only $4.2 million rather than the anticipated $8.4 million. So the developer this evening is asking for an amendment to the redevelopment agreement and the cooperation agreement to extend the sharing of the sales tax portion for another 10 years, up to the original maximum still of just over $2 million, whichever occurs first. This will potentially increase the reimbursement to $5.2 million, still well short of what was originally anticipated. So now I'll turn it over again to Will with U.S. Retail Partners. He'll provide an update on the investments that have been made at the Village Shopping Center and then be available for any questions. Will?
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you all for having me this evening. I thought of first what I'd like to do, because 5 years ago some of you may not have been here, is just a little bit of an update and about our company. U.S. Retail Partners is a partnership that we have. We have single-purpose entities that own certain shopping centers, but it's a wholly owned subsidiary of Regency Centers Corporation, which is who I work for in Denver. My office is in the Tech Center. We're a public company traded on NASDAQ. We went public in 1994. And today, we own almost 500 shopping center properties across the country. We are 93% retail shopping centers with that many properties across the country in major markets. We do have some office, some residential, but very, very little. Our core business is grocery-anchored retail centers. And I'm really proud of the company that I work for. When I was here 5 years ago, we were probably only 420 shopping centers. So we have a long, patient strategy. Our investors, you can go buy our stock on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange, but most of our investors are big pension funds. State of California Teachers Pension is a big investor of our stock. So just to indicate kind of the conservative nature of who's interested in our company and our model. We have over 20 offices across the country. I run our Denver office in our Rocky Mountain region, which is about 20 properties, about 2 million square feet here in Colorado. And I have a team of property managers and leasing agents here locally. A little bit about our, thank you. Just some key tenets to who we are as a company. Again, this has grown and changed over the years. We have a model of long-term value creation, a great corporate culture, and a good brand and reputation as a shopping center owner and developer across the country. We really, truly believe and speak to being partners with the communities that we're in and where we own centers and operate them. I work with some great people. We have a great internal culture. We are highly ethical, and we have invested a lot recently in DEI and ESG initiatives in the company. We've been voted one of the top 5 companies in the country for corporate responsibility, and it's something we live and breathe, and I'm really, really proud of. So it just so happens, if you can switch to the next one, here we go. So these are, I'm not going to read them all, but again, a little bit more detail on who we are in our portfolio. 80% of our shopping centers are grocery-anchored neighborhood and community centers. I like to say we're mostly in Tier 1 markets across the country, and we usually have the number 1 or number 2 grocer as our key tenant. So, for example, we're probably Whole Foods' biggest landlord, Publix and Kroger. We're right up there with their top landlords across the country, so we have great relationships and partnerships with those companies. Again, best-in-class operating portfolio and platform. We have offices all over the country, so while we are big public, we do really operate each one of these regions with a local team of people who know the communities that we're in, and I'm here a lot, and my team's here at the center a lot. Value creation. We develop ground-up centers. We buy shopping centers from other owners. We sell centers that don't meet our criteria, and we renovate and redevelop like we did at Applewood. So it just so happens the history of Applewood, we did not build it originally. It was built over 50 years ago. We acquired it in 2005 through a partnership agreement, and we've done a substantial amount of renovation to the property over the years. And then the last one I'm really proud of, our balance sheet. With all the rising interest rates and the economic news, we use long-term, low-leverage corporate bonds. We have over $1 billion line of credit that we're able to draw down on. When we acquired, we just acquired a 80-property portfolio in the Northeast. It was about $1.5 billion, and we didn't have to use any cash. It was an all-stock deal. Very similar, like-minded company. But me here locally, when I wanted to invest and redevelop Applewood, we probably spent $35 million over a 10-year period in different phases. We never got a loan to do that. We have the capacity internally because of our strong balance sheet and our low leverage to invest that capital. As such, we're very disciplined with our returns for our shareholders and our strategy. And so what I wanted to go into historically was the reason why we came originally and made the request in 2019 were the returns for the investment when Walmart left were not returns we would have invested that money other than the participation and help through the urban renewal district and sharing some of the sales tax. Walmart left, it left a void for the city and their sales tax. We had some good prospects interested in the building, but you know, it was a 50-year-old building with a lot of infrastructure deficiencies. So we were extremely pleased with that result in getting that original agreement done. And I believe a lot of good things even since that we hadn't committed to at that time we've moved forward on, which I wanted to go through on this slide. So at that time, Walmart had just left units 180, 160, 140, 120, 100, and 110. That was the entire Walmart building. And today we've got Hobby Lobby, Home Goods, Sierra Trading Post, Ulta Cosmetic, Eyeglass World, and a local small business that runs an internet business who's using Unit 110 for their distribution and storage for that. So that's a really good story. Small business that was bursting at the seams, I think, out of their house here locally and needed some warehouse space. So we invested in that building, redid the site work in the parking lot in front of that building, and we had created, the RTD lease had expired. They had a transfer station where the Chick-fil-A is. We negotiated a lease with Chick-fil-A. That was delayed 2.5 years due to COVID. And I think at the time we did the original agreement in 19, we were already talking about Chick-fil-A, and it wasn't until this year that they actually opened. So that was also one piece that we thought the revenue stream was going to come in earlier, and they put everything on hold when COVID hit. So thankfully, we were able to restructure the deal and keep it going and actually get it done. We also did a ground lease with Valvoline down on the other end. That was an old First Bank parcel we bought. Applejack remodeled, and we restructured their lease for 15 years. And it looks beautiful. We're really happy about that. And then most recently, we executed a lease with First Watch in the former Chili's building. So a lot's gone on. If you're out there today, the only piece we don't own is labeled NAP2. That's actually its own parcel. And 37, 38, and 39 are the oldest building left on the site, which actually right now I'm contemplating demolishing that building and building one last modern retail building there. So we're about done. Five Below in Unit 29, sorry, we just signed that lease and they're under construction to replace Tuesday Morning. So as you can see, over a 10-year period, Applewood, out of my 20 centers in my portfolio, used to be probably number 4 or 5. Today, I would tell you it's the best center in my portfolio and getting even better every day. So, and that's, a lot of that is to the partnership we've had and the agreement with the city. Next one. Here are just some renderings. I probably should have put these last, but you guys have seen it, I'm sure. That was a rendering before we built it. I think it came out really nice. And then there's the new Valvoline, Chick-fil-A, Applejack, and the First Watch. So here's, I won't read every single one of these also, but this is a timeline, and it wasn't until I started writing the timeline a few weeks ago that I actually sunk in how much we've actually done at the property over the last 10 years. But 2013 to 17, we did not own several of the parcels that comprise the shopping center today. There was an old gas station and retail building at the corner that actually the Metro Districts created by Cabela's actually owned, and we acquired that from them. We then remediated that site and did the Starbucks lease. The area where the King Soopers Fuel Center is, There was a parking lot owned by Wells Fargo Bank, and we bought that parcel, knocked down an old obsolete building, solved a major detention and drainage problem at the site by building the pond, and then we did the ground lease for the King Soopers Fuel Center. Where Hacienda, Colorado is, that's a brand-new building. We didn't own that parcel either. Wells Fargo Bank owned that one. We acquired that, knocked it down, did a build-to-suit for Hacienda, Colorado. And then I think that's about it for the land we didn't own. Shortly thereafter, or during that time period, Walmart sales kept declining. They finally made a decision to close the store. And part of the reason was that the King Soopers lease, they have a very strong store, restricted the ability for Walmart to sell groceries and compete with them in the same shopping center. And so Walmart never invested in the store. So they kind of let it decline, and the customers stopped going, and eventually they just closed it. But actually and we anticipated maybe someday that'll happen, but it happened pretty quickly, and we quickly scrambled to see what type of tenants we might be able to attract, and I was in a lot of discussions with the city. TJ Maxx operates TJ Maxx stores, Home Goods, Sierra Trading Post, and Marshalls. They're a great credit tenant, a great retailer across the country. We have a lot of stores with them. They expressed immediate interest. Hobby Lobby did as well, and then we were able to attract Ulta, which brings a really great customer to the center. And then finally, we did Eyeglass World in that last space. So at that time, I remember driving when Walmart was vacant with my CEO. He said, "Will, how much is this going to cost to get a tenant back in?" And I think I said, I don't know, maybe $8 to $10 million. And my project manager was in the car, and he was like, "Oh, no, Will, it's going to be 12, 14. It ended up being $19.6 million. And that was several years ago. I mean, with inflation, the cost of new investment is even worse today. So thank God, and thank you very much for helping us make the decision to invest and bring these retailers. But as Patrick and Steve mentioned, very quickly after we had the first tenants open in the building, the pandemic hit, and anything that wasn't necessary retail was shut down. And so a sales tax, as you can imagine, a sales tax-based model was severely impacted. And it really wasn't until last year where we started seeing the type of revenue on the sales tax side that we expected to be really in year one. During that time period, again, I mentioned Applejack, Chick-fil-A, Valvoline. They're all open now. And then here we are in 2024 with the agreement set to expire. So why would you guys give us an extension? I've got a few thoughts on this. Number one, the partnership between this city and the urban renewal has been extremely good, candid, and open. I believe we've lived up to our end of the bargain, and I believe you guys have as well. For me to be here 10 years later still talking to you guys about how great Applewood is and also where we can take it in the future, I think speaks volumes. Do you guys have to extend it? No, you don't. I believe it's a win-win. I believe that the sales tax projections probably ultimately long-term will exceed what we ever expected at the center. It just so happens they haven't hit it. And if we ever do hit the original projections, the request would be that it would stop at that point in time. And so projections are projections. I've talked with Patrick about if we got an extension, how many more years to get to the original number we thought, maybe 7 or 8 years, but that's anybody's guess. If we hit another downturn or sales take off, it could pay back sooner or later. Third item, we're a long-term holder, we're not a merchant builder. Great assets like this one, we own long-term. You will be talking to my company about this center for a long, long time. We're not going to sell it next week, we're not going to sell it in 5 years. This is a core asset for our company, and as long as it continues to perform and we continue to bring great retail to it, it's going to be a core asset for the company. I did want to touch on this, and I'm really not I wasn't in the room, but I know Jefferson County, the property tax increment portion of the incentive, we are back on track with our projection and our model, but there was a couple years where Jefferson County was not all that cooperative in helping us determine the increment. Steve, I know, spent a lot of time working with them to finally get that broken loose, but we did also lose some time on the model because of that. And then I guess the last one I had was just the 7 to 10 year payback. So, you know, I didn't want to go into too much detail, but I can certainly answer historical detail questions, anything you have, but we're really, really proud of the center and really proud to be here tonight working with you guys.
Okay, we'll start with questions. Councilor Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't necessarily have any questions. I'm also on the Urban Renewal Authority Board, so I know about this project pretty well and was on there when we approved this and was on council when we approved it at council. I think one of the things that I just wanted to mention is that when we look at these types of agreements, yes, you know, the amount of years it is, we consider that, but really what we're looking at is the final price tag. And being that, you know, originally it was supposed to be a $2 million plus some change share back. And in the memo, it projects it potentially in the next it says 4 years in the memo, but we're saying, you know, potentially adding 10, but that we could possibly be completed with this agreement. And so I just wanted to just kind of bring that up, that I think that the price tag is typically what we look at. Yes, if it was like a 25-year, we might start batting our eyes at that. But, you know, in my opinion, I think that it's important that we come to a consensus to support the extension on this. Without all of the redevelopment that they did up at that site, it would most definitely be blighted at this point. So, especially because that happened just before COVID. If it had happened right at COVID, we'd probably still be sitting looking at a blighted site. So. So I'm in support of supporting this, or I'm in support of this.
Thank you. Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. The one question I had was when you, way back when in 2019, Chick-fil-A did not exist, so does the sales tax, does that now include that under that umbrella as far as generation?
Yeah, at the time, we didn't, we knew Chick-fil-A was a prospect that could be the ultimate user, but we had a few different prospects and thoughts on, and so we modeled a user generating some sales tax, and quite frankly, it just never opened and got one done in the entire 5-year period until now, so.
Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm for this. I think we should absolutely essentially honor this agreement because it was $2 million in 2017. It's just taking longer, and I think we all understand why. Everything's taken longer over the last couple of years than it should have. I live within walking distance of this shopping center, and this is in my district. I love the investments you guys have made in the shopping center, and you kind of answered one of my questions about the Holly West building, which I think you said you were talking about knocking. Do you know how much that's going to cost?
Right now, we've got a schematic plan for about a 7,000-foot multi-tenant retail building. That could be 1 to 3 tenants. My cost estimates internally are over $4 million, which is pretty expensive, which if you kind of work backwards on real estate returns and what we're looking for, we need $45 to $50 triple net rents to make that work. And we actually have interest from 2 out of 3 tenants at those levels right now. It's kind of shocking with inflation what's happened in Colorado. It's not just here, it's everywhere. You know, I don't think these prices or taxes or rents are going down anywhere in the country. So, but we're very cautious. We're going to continue to negotiate those, look at the credit of those tenants, decide if that investment makes sense, but we would like to do that, and I think it still makes sense. I think it speaks to the strength of the shopping center that we can attract that kind of rent level at a building here.
Yeah, I've looked at spaces to rent in your shopping center. It's a little out of my price range, but definitely, I do appreciate, and I think as a city, we appreciate all the investment that you guys put back into that shopping center. It shows, and it's one of our largest tax base. In fact, I think it might be our largest for the entire city. So we should do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am definitely in support of this, and I have a comment and a question. You know, I was elected in the fall of 2019, and I just think about how much that corridor of I-70 has changed visually since I've been elected through investments like this shopping center and as well on the other side of the highway. And so I really think, you know, we spend a lot of time talking about our main streets and corridors, but I actually take a lot more pride in how we look like from our interstate through that corridor. It's one of our most visible corridors, and I think it's really, I mean, I don't need to tell you, it's highly visible and has really good exposure and traffic, and with the, you know, I think Clerk will be good for it. So to that end, as you're looking at continued investment over a long history in the site, what are the conversations around investing in some charging infrastructure? We have really learned from the Target at Arvada is one of the most used charging stations in the state, and it's because people stop and they charge their car and they go spend some money. And I think investment in charging infrastructure would really actually help support, you know, the exposure and the tenants there for people to get off the damn interstate and come spend some money in Wheat Ridge. So I'm just curious what your investment strategy is around charging infrastructure as economic development.
Yeah, I wish I would have had Mark Peternell here. He's actually the director of our national sustainability program, but he offices in my local office in Denver. So I'm fortunate to have him here locally executing that. And he's one of the number one people in the company that works on charging stations across our portfolio and solar and a lot of sustainability initiatives. We have a proposal on charging stations that I'm reviewing internally for 2 possible locations at the center. They take a lot of time. We plan those based on priority and capital, but we are interested in doing, I actually thought we'd have them there by now. So I can't tell you when, but I think it's a really good candidate being on I-70, number one, for charging networks generally. So there is interest from, and we don't operate those ourselves. When we do those agreements, we have a third-party operator and we just lease the ground for them. So haven't picked an operator, haven't picked a location on the site, but we are studying it right now.
Well, that's a better answer than I was expecting, so that's exciting. I do have a question. Is that something that is helping support charging infrastructure, something that urban renewal can be a partner in?
It could. Unfortunately, when we did the bond issuance, we can't issue any more debt in that plan area.
Got it.
Yeah.
But, so,
We could look at it, certainly if that interest.
It's an eligible expense. It might be, yeah. Sounds like Will's going to cover it all, though, so.
Well, and those, I don't know the current numbers, I shouldn't speak out, but those aren't generally millions of dollars
Yeah.
either. Those are hundreds of thousands to get those things installed in terms of the capital requirement. The user, the lessee, spends a lot of their capital, but I'm hearing in the $500,000 range for quite a few of those.
great, thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions? Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. There's no doubt that this Applewood Center is the economic powerhouse in Wheat Ridge. And it will be for a long time down the road. You look at the numbers and the return back to the city, both in terms of the sales tax and just the general view of Wheat Ridge as being a place where you can go and you can shop at some very, very good, reputable stores, and that's to be commended. I was not on the council back in 2019 when this was discussed, but I'm wondering, because of the having to renew an agreement that had a timeline, and the termination date was supposed to be 2024, while I understand most crystal balls that are out there don't work, and so there's no way to really anticipate things like COVID, is there something that we could have done back then, maybe extending the time or changing the terms a bit, to avoid having to go through what we're going through right now?
Yeah, you know, I guess Will and I talk about this a lot. We use a third-party EPS, I always get it wrong, firm. We use them quite often to analyze deals like this. And there was a lot of back and forth on, I think, the estimates and the projections that were being used. I think Will was in such a, if you don't mind, in a hurry to get the deal done that maybe they didn't push back enough. I think maybe in hindsight, the projections modeling was probably off a little bit. But I don't think that was primarily the biggest issue. The biggest issue was obviously the COVID and the market reaction to that. But yeah, I don't know, beyond that, I don't know, Will, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it is a bit of speculation, but, you know, I think about this and how that occurred, and you guys as a city, you know, are a fiduciary to your community, and you have to hire a third-party consultant. That consultant comes in and does a model. They call us and say, you know, what are the ranges of sales you expect, and they use that as part of their data. They use their network of sales tax data on these models across the country to put together a model and ultimately come here and have to defend what they're saying to you folks. And I thought to myself, you know, at the time, their projections were stronger, you know, and I remember having conversations going, hey, you know, if it goes really, really well, yeah, I can believe those projections, but, you know, my company discounts those projections because we have a lot of these models across the country, and a lot of them don't pay off as quickly. And I think we did ask, you know, what's the possibility of, you know, having this for 10 years instead of 5? Because for us, it was like the city, if we hit the number quicker, the agreement ends anyway. So it wasn't much downside to the city, but I thought to myself, if the consultant comes in and says it's going to project lower, and then we overperform, maybe the consultant is concerned that, you know, they underestimated, and they're concerned about your opinion of them as the, you know, the expert they're looking to. So I don't know. I mean, that's speculation a little bit, but.
Councilor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd also like to just mention, we utilize that third-party consultant often. I don't know that we've come across this issue very often, but again, it's modeling and it's projecting, you know, so it's really just a good guessing. You try to make your best guessing game. Making amendments, though, to agreements is also not out of, like, it's not out of bounds. You know, it's something that we've done in the past. It's perfectly, you know, legal, and it's really part of doing business with urban renewal authorities.
I've got a couple of questions, none of them about this deal, but since we have a retail expert in the house, you know, with the pandemic and the rise of online retailing, what are your thoughts on brick and mortar retail sort of going forward?
Love talking about this stuff. It's the business we're in. We sit around our office doing this all the time. You know, a couple thoughts on that. I tell this story a lot. Forgive me if I've told it here, but I started in this business back in the late 90s, and the first leases we did, the retail leases after the grocery lease, when we were building a shopping center, it's Radio Shack, Blockbuster, and Hallmark. You know, there aren't any of them left anymore. But here we are, fast forward 20-some years, and those spaces are filled with better credit tenants, better, we evolve with the market. And so that's the first thing I would tell you is we've been able to re-merchandise great centers. Great real estate is great real estate, and the businesses that aren't affected negatively by the internet are thriving. We also have started internally a new category of merchandising, and we actually there's a segment of our shopping centers that we call healthy living, and we created that definition in the last 10 years because we started seeing, and I think the percentage was 14%, projected to go to like 20% of our portfolio we will be able to define as healthy living centers, and that definition is maybe still the number 1 or 2 grocer in the market, but also health and wellness tenants, medical tenants, and I kind of lump a lot of them together: massage, dental, chiropractor, fitness, drugstores, and actual medical tenants, doctors' offices and specialties, which again, here in Wheat Ridge with the hospital, they don't have enough space for the ancillary specialties. And we've been in some discussions, and there are some that work really well in a retail center. There's some that, aren't as good, but I don't know if, a dialysis center fits in a great retail center, but there are specialties that can work really well in merchandise in the center. So the short answer is we continue to evolve, and that we're healthier than ever, and my company's stronger and better than it's ever been right now.
Great. Thank you for that observation. That helps. Mayor Pro Tem Stites?
I was just going to ask for a consensus that we move forward with the recommendation, and, well, we'll just move forward with the recommendation.
I was just about to do that myself, so
sorry.
thank you. Looks like we've got a consensus to move this forward. So thank you very much for coming in. Wish you a lot of good luck and great merchants over there. We're really happy to have them here and have you all here. All right, thanks so much. Okay, we're going to move to our agenda item number 2. This is the final design for the green at 38th.
Oh, would you rather speak from here? You should sit at the table. Yeah.
All right, ready, Mayor?
Ready?
Thank you very much. Moving on to our next item, final design for the green at 38th. We have Mark Taylor from Architera Group here. He's been our architect. You've seen him a few times. Sam Miller in the back is an architect with the Jeffco School District. He's been working with us quite some last several months also. Again, I want to give a quick brief introduction to this, and then I'll turn it over to Mark. He's got a great presentation. It's in your packet as well. For this one, I'm going to go back even a little bit further to 2005. That's when the inception of the Green Project really started, if you really look back. The 2005 Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy, out of that report, the report concluded Wheat Ridge is a community that lacks a defined center. The NRS at that time also emphasized the need for an appealing pedestrian-oriented destination, such as 38th Avenue. That vision was reinforced in the 2009 Envision Wheat Ridge Comprehensive Plan, the 38th Avenue Corridor Plan that was adopted in 2011, and the 2019 update to the NRS. Very initial concept plans for the green were created as part of the 38th Avenue Corridor Plan. And then finally, in City Council's 2018-2019 strategic plan, one of the top 5 priorities was to finalize the design for the 38th Avenue streetscape. This is not exactly that, but I think it goes a long ways to meeting that priority. In 2017, you all remember the big hailstorm we had? Wiped out the city for the most part. It really caused significant damage to pretty much a majority of every structure in the city. You don't remember that, Leah? You remember that?
Everybody got a new roof.
Everybody got a new roof, which mean that increased some revenues to the city. Between 2017 and 2018, building permit and use tax revenue did increase substantially at approximately about 900,000 more than we saw on a normal basis. Former council members at the time, Fitzgerald, Pond, and Davis, requested a study session to discuss reinvesting those funds into an amenity that the entire community could enjoy. So consensus was reached in 2018 by council to move forward with a community engagement and design process for the green. We've now reached final design phase and are scheduled to start construction on the first phase of the school parking lot on June 1st. With that, I have much more, but we'll go ahead and get it turned over to Mark, and he will review with you the design process since they came on board.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me again. Good to see you all. So yeah, lots to cover today. Wanted to go through the design process that we've been through and then give you an update on the design for the Green at 38th also. So if we can go to the first slide. So just a reminder, the Green is located east of Wadsworth on 38th Avenue between Upham Street and High Court. And we're really looking at the front lawn of Stevens. We can go to the next slide. So, you know, this site has been used by the city through an agreement with the school district, and in working with Local Works, putting on a lot of community events, concerts, Ridge Fest, the Criterium and Brew Fest, holiday celebration, trunk or treat. There's a lot of things that happen here. But this site was really never designed for this use. It's just a site that's been available. So if we can go to the next slide. That's a lot of those events that take place. In the next slide. So, you know, temporary stages, it's all temporary restroom facilities. There's really no amenities for people who attend those events. So we can go to the next slide. So we were hired in late 2018 to really start looking at designing that lawn space that, that is currently the Green at 38th. And our first thing was to meet with a stakeholder group. We met in October of 2018, and attendees included folks from Jeffco Schools, Stevens Elementary, Local Works, some local business owners, and city staff. And we talked about the needs and desires for the project and ultimately developed a vision statement that was to create a flexible and safe gathering space that can be used for community events, concerts, and festivals, while also providing a physical buffer and separation from the school space. And there were some particular objectives there, wanting to have a venue for outdoor performances, a permanent structure for shade and for performances, and a few other things as well. So we looked at a few design options. So if we can go to the next slide. The first two concepts that we looked at really focused on that available green space. So that's one, and then we have one other one. But we really felt like we were challenged in trying to provide separation from the school with it being right next to the main entrance. So we looked at another option where we kind of swapped the park and parking lot, at least get it further from the main entrance. And then finally we looked at this option that really used the parking lot to separate the park from the school. Another benefit of that is that that the park really gets the full frontage along 38, which is a real benefit. So the city and school district talked about that, had some discussions, and decided that this concept of redesigning the parking lot to separate the two sites really made the most sense. So we developed that plan a little further, working with Jeffco Schools on the circulation for the parking lot, and came to City Council with that plan in October of 2019. So had general support for that, and were asked to look at continuing the design. So we had another meeting with the stakeholder group. And in general, the stakeholder group also favored the concept, thought it worked well. And then we started to get into more details about things to consider on the site. So that included things like making sure that it's a flexible space to allow for multiple kinds of events, trying to contain everything within the park rather than needing to spill onto the street, so having room for food trucks and those kind of things. I won't read all of those, but basically getting into a lot of details about the site. So then over the next several months, we developed 2 different concepts that really used that idea of using the parking lot to separate the park and the school. So we have this one that was based on that preliminary concept that you all had seen, and then this other one that looked at a different way of organizing the site. And with those 2, we had some good public outreach. So we had a public meeting in September of 2021, had about 40 people attend that. And then we also had online outreach through What's Up Wheat Ridge. We had about 1,100 visits to the project page, and we had 177 respondents to an online survey that essentially equally favored the two plans. No clear consensus among the public. So we came to a city council meeting in April of 2022, and we're given direction to use the first concept, Concept A, with a few elements from Concept B as well. So from there, we started to do some research about the project site. So one of the things that we found is that this project site is the oldest continually occupied educational site in the state of Colorado. So the first school was built on that site, actually moved to that site in 1873. That's the one-room schoolhouse on the upper left there. Since that time, there have been several different school buildings on this site continuously since then. And the current school in the bottom right there was built in 1994. Since the very first days of the school, that one-room schoolhouse served as a community center. Part of our research, if we can go to the next slide, we found this written recollection by F.T. Johnson, who was born in 1860, came to Wheat Ridge in 1881 as a young man, but he noted that the schoolhouse was used for social affairs. So the Methodist Church met there. The first Grange in Colorado was established and met in that school building. The school was the home to the library, a literary society. It was a polling place and had other social events. And in particular, Mr. Johnson wrote, "We gave entertainment to almost everybody in the neighborhood, as well as those within traveling distance attended. We put on plays and furnished music which drew large crowds and filled the schoolhouse to capacity, and sometimes standing room was at a premium." So we think there's this really powerful story that the area's children have been educated on this site, and people have been gathering to connect here as a community for over 150 years on this site. So we're really excited that this project gets to make sure that that continues, that tradition continues for a long time. We were also really inspired by the agrarian kind of background and roots of Wheat Ridge. So this is a 1937 aerial of Wheat Ridge. And if we go to the next slide, this is kind of zoomed in. The street right in the middle there going horizontally, left to right, is 38th Avenue. And on the left, there's kind of a square building. That's the school site. That's our project site right now. We were really inspired by this kind of patchwork land use, the fields, the orchards throughout that. And we've also been thinking about sort of the community in Wheat Ridge and sort of this patchwork of people and businesses and ideas that really come together to make up this community. So through a lot of our research, we found a lot of images from, farming days, from past parades, sports teams, all these kind of things that really go to kind of make up the community. So when we started working on developing the layout beyond what we had, we did have some concerns about the layout of Concept A that we had talked about previously. And as we talked with staff, the stage building grew a little bit, needing to have a larger stage. And ultimately, we were concerned that the lawn wasn't going to be large enough to kind of hold the number of people that we wanted to hold for these kind of events. And we really only had about 7,000 square feet of lawn that was going to have adequate views of the stage, and it was a very short lawn, only about 50 feet from front of stage to back of lawn. So we worked with staff and agreed that we should use a concept that's more similar to concept B to accommodate larger audiences, but we did make some changes to the plans to accommodate some concerns that council had expressed when we had met. So we developed this, if we can go one more slide, developed this updated plan. And you can see sort of the patchwork concept there that's shown on the plan view. We have planters, there's paving patterns that are really inspired by that aerial photograph. But there's a lot of benefits to mirroring this. We've essentially mirrored what you were seeing previously on the concept B. So now the stage is on the west side of the site facing east. So in doing that, we've been able to save 7 mature trees on the site that include the 4 evergreens that are on the southeast corner that are used for holiday lighting. We have better solar orientation for the performers on the stage. The access to the stage from the rear, from Upham, works very well. It allows for a bigger stage structure, so that includes some storage rooms and green room. And then it also directs the sound away from the West 38th apartments. So we found a lot of benefit in doing all of that. Patrick mentioned the importance of getting this project started and making sure that we have a June 1 start date. So one of the things that we've been really focused on is working on the parking lot plans. So we separated the project into 2 phases. This is an image of one of the plans for the parking lot plans. So this shows a driveway entrance on both Upham and High Court. That was kind of a change that was added based on a request from the school and the school district to improve circulation. But those plans have been submitted. They've been approved by the school district and West Metro Fire, and anticipating final approval by the city and probably this week. And we have a contractor who's on board and is negotiating a contract right now, so we shouldn't have any issues with starting construction June 1st. And then in the meantime, we've also been updating the plans for the park. So I thought this is the most recent that we have. We're currently working on construction documents for this, but I thought I would go through all of the various components of the plan. So on the left there, we have the stage structure that I've already pointed out. There's an event lawn right in front of that. Just to the east of the lawn is a community gathering area that we'll talk more about. And then east of that, we have a playground. There's a big curved promenade through the park that allows for multiple uses there. There's a plaza along 38th Avenue, a seating area next to that, a few walks that provide some good connections to the playground, and then we have the plantings and some streetscape improvements as well. So we can kind of go through some of these park elements, and if we go to the next slide, we're anticipating a entrance sign at the corner of Upham and 38th to really greet people as they're coming into the site. We're still looking at fonts and colors and that kind of thing, but just want to kind of show the idea of this sign at that entrance. Right next to that, we have this area that, or this item that we're calling the Wheat Ridge Community Patchwork. So the idea is to take that patchwork idea and really demonstrate that with the community. So the intent here is that these would be illuminated polycarbonate panels with images on them. We can go to the next slide. So really sort of showing some of these both historic and current images as a patchwork that really reflects the community. The lower panels shown there would be also polycarbonate with some steel mesh in front of them, but those could be lighted different colors, so holiday lighting, city colors, whatever it would be at different times. And that parallels the promenade. We can go to the next slide. So the promenade is made up of a 12-foot main walk. There's a 10-foot soft surface crusher fines area toward the lawn that allows for flexible space for tables and trees along that. And then an 8-foot area on the opposite side of that for viewing the community patchwork, but also allowing for food trucks to park there as well. And it's also flex space for other uses. So some examples of how that could operate. During concerts, there's room for food trucks to park along there.
That could also be used for farmers markets and those kind of events. And there's also flexibility where that could be set up in the lawn and also have room for food trucks and some other things. So really trying to think of this as a very flexible space that the city would be able to use for lots of different things. The community gathering area just next to that. So that has a shade structure, and we've been looking at a custom seating element. And then site furnishings around there, sort of lounge kind of seating. There's 2 fire pits there, ping pong table, and there's also kind of cornhole boards off in the lawn. So really seeing that as a main area for the community to gather. When we last met, there were some concerns about fire pits in a public space. So wanted to talk about some of the research that we've done about that. What we have here are, if we can go back one, we have 3 examples here from a couple of parks. The one on the upper left is in Festival Park in downtown Castle Rock. The bottom left is Jean Leahy Mall, that's in Omaha. And then the 2 on the right are Discovery Park and Parker. So 2 of those are public-operated fire pits. Public can go and turn those on. If we can go to the next slide. There's actually a timer on the one there in Parker. It obviously has an emergency shutoff. But basically, those are able to be turned on. They produce some heat, but it's less than you may think. So the one with the guy leaning against the the cover there, that fire had been on for at least 30 minutes because I turned it on and was sort of hanging out there. So, and after that much time, I could put my hand on the metal front and back, and it was lukewarm. And if you go back one slide, if you look at the upper right image, there's actually snow right around the edge of the fire pit there. So a lot of it is for ambiance and just a way to bring people together. It obviously does provide a little bit of warmth, but just wanted to show some examples of that and kind of talk about the amount of heat that comes off of that. And then you can see there's examples of open fire versus also having a cover on that. So I think it's been done both ways in public spaces. We did talk to Castle Rock about this. They said they've never had any issues with them. The reason they did end up putting some covers over them is in a different park, they had people kind of cooking marshmallows over the fire and get into some of those kind of issues. But they said people use them all the time. And then moving on from that, we have a play area just next to that. We don't have a lot of square footage for a play area, so I wanted to try to produce some kind of interest and good play values. So we're looking at having some vertical towers for play there. Those are ADA accessible. There's actually a spiral belt that goes all the way up through the tower so people can access that. So it is fully accessible. There's 2 towers for 5 to 12-year-olds, and we're also looking at a separate structure for 2 to 5-year-olds. Planning on synthetic turf for play surfacing. We have some seat walls and benches for parents to sit around that, including that seating structure we just looked at in the main gathering space. And then we have tables and chairs along the plaza as well, so lots of opportunities for seating around that. And then this is an example of both of those structures that have been built. Also looking at another opportunity for some kind of bring people together. There's some musical instruments right across the promenade from the playground. So the intent here is that they're sculptural. They are designed as musical instruments. They're actually tuned so it's not like clanging on plastic or metal. But a good opportunity for folks to come together there. Just next to that, we have this seating grove, and really looking at that to be sort of a quiet place for people to hang out. Some kind of sculptural seating and seating on the benches around that, but a good place to read a book or bring lunch that you may have purchased nearby. Looking at having a crusher fine surface there, so really wanting that to feel somewhat like a kind of picnic area or leisure area. Just next to that, we have this 38th Avenue Plaza. Again, really trying to focus on the flexible use there. So thinking about movable tables and chairs along that, really having a strong connection to the street,
This could also be used for those kind of events. And on the lower left image, lower right image, you can see the potential to add Santalets for bigger events. And then going to the lawn, really looking at trying to make this an interesting place for people during different times. So considering catenary lights over the lawn, really to provide ambiance during events. You can imagine hanging out there in the evening and having that kind of light. I think something that the project team has talked about is just the flexible use of the lawn. So those kind of lights could make it harder to toss a football or that kind of thing. So if we think that's important, I think there's ways to use those lights around the outside edge, but something that the design team has been talking about with staff. Going to the stage, the intent is for that to be a concrete and steel structure with a tongue and groove wood ceiling, trying to just provide some warmth to that. You can see the 2 rooms in the back that are for storage or a green room. And then we've been working with staff to make sure we got the right size, width, and depth for that stage. The intent is just to provide electrical outlets, and performers would bring their own AV equipment and that kind of thing. Back to the plan view, on the upper right of the park, there's a little roof there. That's a Santalet enclosure that would be there all the time. We've got that placed close to the road for ease of access for maintenance. Again, the planters, the intent is to really think about that kind of patchwork aerial, and the intent is to have monocultures of plants in each of those different planters, so you've got these really strong forms throughout. Along the streetscape, there is new street lighting, new trees along the street. Planning to have enough bike racks for at least 20 bikes. And then there's a bus stop that we'd be resetting there with bench and trash receptacle. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the site furnishings as well. So one of the things that we've been working with staff about is using some wood in some of those elements. So these use thermally modified ash. And really the intent here is just to bring some warmth so everything's not kind of hard steel. It also ties in with the ceiling for the stage and the shelter. Looking at the custom seating elements, if we go to the next, these are some examples of how those can look. These are also built with thermally modified ash. Lots of different seating positions and an ability to have LED lights within that, so the entire structure can kind of glow in the evening. In that community gathering space, we talked about some game tables, so those are built with concrete and steel. We've used these in several of our parks. They are kind of bring your own bags and ping pong equipment. In some of the other areas, we have some seat walls, so we've got some wall top benches using the same materials, looking at some game tables, and then those benches actually are plastic and have LED lights in them, so they can glow in the evening as well, those sculptural seating elements. And then other tables and chairs, we've been talking a lot about flexible use. So we've really been focused primarily on the movable tables and chairs, the cafe tables there, looking to bring a pop of color to the park, some flexibility for people to be able to sit in different ways. And then we've also, these are stackable, so if there's events, they're easy to kind of store somewhere. And then also looking at having some potentially permanent tables and chairs as well in some areas. And then that last image is looking at the streetscape furniture. These are city standards, and the intent is just to kind of match what happens elsewhere along the streetscape. But I think we like having this contrast between what's happening on the streetscape and what's happening in the park a little bit. So that's a quick rundown of the process and the park design.
Great,
So,
thank you very much.
Yeah, any questions I can answer?
Questions? Counselor Hoppy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you said that we'd have new street lights along the street. Currently, as I understand, Xcel Energy owns those, so would we be buying those particular ones there by that park and replacing them with the ones we want?
Yes, that's right. So the ones that are used along 38th at other locations are not Excel lights, so yes.
Yeah.
The city would be purchasing
Well,
those.
Harlan to Sheridan, we own, and then Harlan to Youngfield, we don't own, right? Okay. Or Wadsworth. Would those streetlights then have, plugs on them?
Yes,
okay.
that's something we've been talking about.
Great. And then my only other question is, do you think that the lawn area would be able to host an ice rink in the winter, or do you think it would ruin the lawn underneath that if we did that?
Yeah, it's a good question. The lawn is not flat.
Okay.
So it slopes from east to west. So I think it would be challenging to be able to do that.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Counselor Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. So this indicates that it's the final concept, but there is going to be a driveway from High Court into the parking lot, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then with the amphitheater or stage, the music is going to be projected east.
Correct.
So what kind of like finishes are you using to buffer that sound from the apartments to the west?
Yeah, so that's a good question. There's, part of it is the two buildings at the back of the stage. And then we also have, on the landscape plan there, you can see there's a lot of trees along that. The intent was to sort of have that stage fit into the landscape. So that should help absorb some of that sound.
Thank you. Counselor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mark, for the presentation. A couple questions I have are on the entrances for the food trucks on the
Yep.
east and west. Is there gonna be some type of bollard to prevent vehicle access?
That's a good question. That's not something that we've talked about. Not that we couldn't add that,
Okay.
but it's not something that staff has raised as a concern.
And then the other question is along that large access, are there going to be some type of power outlets for the food trucks?
Yes, there is. There's going to be both 110 and 220
Okay,
along the wall.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is really cool. I think this is a pretty exciting design, and it looks like a really cool place to go hang out. And I do appreciate your firm being so quick to answer the comments and the questions from the parents and the people at Stevens who, I got a couple calls and panics from some parents that we were about ready to build the worst parking lot ever or something. Which, I understand there's 200 and some more kids there this year than when this parking lot was initially designed. So I definitely appreciate that. My question is about the lights above the green. You said those would possibly be removed or?
They could be.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that could go either way. They could either be removed, they could stay in place, they could be just around the outside edge, they could be in certain portions of the lawn, so we have some flexibility there.
And I really like that you guys readjusted the stage to blow the sound away from all the neighborhoods and apartments and everything like that. That makes sense because it's all going towards retail businesses that'll probably be closed. So great job. Thank you.
Thanks.
Counselor Hulteen.
Thank you. It is really exciting to see this, and District 2 is very excited. So I, first of all, just want to thank the city and district staff for being responsive to the community's, interest in making sure that that parking lot was accommodating the traffic. Not necessarily something to resolve here, but Councilor Ohm and I are just also very mindful of, the traffic patterns and impacts. And so I think, beyond the investment here, that we're really looking at how does, an investment like this change both the vehicular and the pedestrian traffic? Because we, Upham goes all the way through from 38th to 44th without any cross-traffic. High Court's kind of a funny little corner, and we've got constituents on both of those corridors who are really concerned. And then, just this is going to be an attractant, not a nuisance. And so there's just going to be a lot more crossings. So I just want us to be registering that. I have a couple of comments, requests. at a high level, it's really exciting to see all of the programming going on in the park. It does feel like a lot of programming, and I know that was one of the things we said we wanted to make sure that there were different ways to interact with the space, and we recognize this is a space that gets activated through like large-scale community events, but most days it'll be, a space where, people within the community or people, spending their hard-earned dollars at Wheat Ridge businesses are gonna be there. So I'm just wanting to be mindful of the amount of just sort of maintenance and attention that so many programming elements, especially ones that can be moved around, and also a little bit concerned about some of how attractive some of the surfaces are for vandalism. So I am sort of curious when you're, proposing the vertical walls with all the really cool history. I loved that history. How concerned should we be around that being an attractant for vandalism?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've had a lot of discussion about that in our meetings with maintenance staff as well about are we comfortable with movable furniture and some of those kind of things, and wood furniture. The discussions so far have been, yes, the city's comfortable. We're trying to be careful with the kind of site furnishings that we're choosing. Specifically with regard to those polycarbonate panels, it's the kind of thing that's used in signage all over in public spaces. I won't say it's impossible to break. Someone could break one of those at some point, but it takes some effort. It can be cleaned off. Graffiti and those kind of things can be pretty easily cleaned off. And
Okay.
if a panel was broken, they're replaceable.
Okay. And then kind of going back to the playground spaces, there is a good playground just right on the outside of that frame there. I wonder if, I like the vertical elements, but, what I've seen a lot of kids really like are just sort of like the low play, climb around, jump around, kind of little bit less programmed play space and a little bit more free-formed. Is that something you guys took a look at as an option, or is that going to get considered for the value engineering exercise?
It is something we looked at. We don't have a lot of square footage for playground space, so it ends up, if we don't go up, we don't have a lot of play value. We don't have a lot of room to provide play value. So we haven't talked about changing that equipment as part of the value engineering, but not that we can't.
Okay. And then my last question is really centered around like the public art versus monumental sign art. So for this project, is that green at 38th sign and then the historical interpretation materials, is that the public art investment for the site?
There would be a separate budget for public art,
Okay.
and so that would be a separate process that we go through with our public art and the Cultural Commission.
Okay.
We did talk about incorporating art into maybe one of those pieces, so the display wall could be considered art, but it's, again, it would have to go through the process, right?
Okay.
So, no, so there would be, we'd have to find another potential location for some type of art piece.
Okay. And then the last question, so June 1st is when we'd want to get out of the ground. What would be the proposed construction schedule for completion?
So the parking lot basically needs to happen in June and July and be ready for the school to open in August. Hoping that the park will be able to start right after that, depending on how long it takes us to kind of get through reviewing things. There could be a couple of month pause there. But basically looking for, what have we talked about, Patrick? Spring of?
Yeah, May-ish
Yeah.
of 25.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Snell.
Thank you, and thanks for this presentation. I appreciate it. And I was not here for the other discussions, although I have been following this project. Councilor Hulteen mentioned this already, but I think this is a great opportunity for some of our local artists to be a part of this in some way, and our historical society with the, with the photos and the history lessons. But I love those designs and the ideas around it, and so thank you for the information around working with the Cultural Commission on that. And just so I'm clear with, as far as like maintenance, is it shared between like Parks and Open Space and school district, or how's
It
the
would be,
maintenance?
and we can get into that next, that's the next item, actually, is to talk about the relationship and the agreement with the school. It would be wholly on the city. We'll own the land and we'll maintain it. Yep.
I had a couple of questions. You mentioned on the stage that the musicians would bring their own amplifiers, so that, how would we have lighting available for the stage?
They would bring their own lighting as well.
Oh, they would bring their lighting as well, so the stage would just have some convenience lights or whatever on
That's
that.
right.
Are the two storage areas in the back, are they large enough to store furniture that we might want to use seasonally?
Yes,
So and that's sort of the intention, that we'd have enough
yes.
sort of room to store that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Dozeman.
Thank you. So this may be more for staff, as far as like the value engineering process. Is that going to take place between the design group and staff, or will that be coming back to council? And like, how different do you anticipate the final concept being from what it looks like now to the anticipated value engineering design?
Sure. I don't think it would change much of the layout and the design. It would be more with the types of materials being used. We've already had a discussion. Primarily, the stage is the most expensive piece of this design, and we've already had initial discussions about using different types of materials for that could cut the cost quite significantly. We just haven't put those numbers to paper yet.
That's right, but the intention is for it to look very similar to what we're showing, just build it in a less expensive way.
Counselor Hoppy.
I forgot one thing. I was excited to hear about all the bike parking that you have planned there. I know.
I saw you take notes.
I know. Yeah, so one of the great amenities, I was just, the last speaker, I was asking about EV charging as economic attractant. As somebody who rides their e-bike everywhere, having places where I can lock my e-bike up and charge it is actually really helpful. So maybe where you've got a little bit of density around the bike parking to put up a plug. Everyone's got proprietary chargers, but if I'm going a distance, I bring my charger with me, and then I have a removable battery, so I'll bring it into the coffee shop. But what I would really love is just to be able to park my bike and charge it there. So something just to contemplate, to have just a couple of little like pop-up, yeah,
Great idea.
e-bike riders everywhere. So thank you.
Now, Counselor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This project has been a long time coming. I've been trying to work towards this for a really long time, so it's really exciting to see the final concept. I'd like to ask for consensus. We need a consensus, right? Wait a minute.
Do we have a consensus to move this project
To
forward?
move forward, yeah.
We do.
Great, thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, yeah, you probably don't. What's that? Yeah, we'll move into the agreement piece. Yeah, yep.
Okay. Mark, thank you very much. We'll now turn to agenda item number 3. This is our agreement with Jefferson School District for the development of the green at 38th.
Great, thank you. I don't know if Sam's coming up. You can come up if you'd like, in case there's questions. He's shy. You came all this way. You might as well come sit at the table. And Mr. Dahl's here too. He's helping with the legal documents and the very complicated reverter language, which we'll talk about a little bit. But so thank you, Mr. Dahl, for coming for that. Jefferson County's the school district's been a great partner in this project. So we want to thank them. They have agreed to convey the property that's necessary for the green portion to the city in exchange for the city constructing the parking lot, which we talked about. And the parking lot is estimated at about $1.4 million. The city is currently working on a plat to separate the green from the parking lot. So the parking lot will be owned and maintained by the school district. The city will own and maintain the green. School district, as part of this agreement, will require the inclusion of a reverter in the agreement, which will basically say that, basically require that the city will operate and maintain this as a park for park purposes. If for some reason we decide not to down the road, which I wouldn't think we would anytime soon, after investing this much, the school district, the property gets deeded back to the school district. Karen O'Donnell has been working with Jefferson County Open Space also. This adds the extra layer into it to remove the reverter that's on the town center park that we've decommissioned and put that on the green. So the Jefferson County Open Space will also need a reverter as part of the agreement that if the city does not continue using this for park purposes, the county, the open space can actually come in and operate it as a park. They want, their reverter needs to be in first place above the school. Mr. Dahl can explain that a bit. Let's see. Yeah, so that's kind of it. The agreement's very simple. There's really just those conditions in it. I am presenting to the Jeffco School Board on Wednesday for their approval of this agreement. But Mr. Dahl, you want to talk about the what you've been working on with the reverter piece and the agreement? Mr. Dahl's read the full agreement.
Sure. I don't have a lot to add. The agreement itself, while it's, 20-some pages long, is the standard Colorado real estate contract, and I've done those many times, and there's nothing special about it, and it's fine, especially here where you have sort of a no consideration transfer in terms of, at least in terms of the money for the acquiring the property. The city will spend, as mentioned, 1.4 million, so more or less, for construction of the parking lot. The real action is in the last paragraph of the agreement, which is where the real action always is, for special conditions attendant upon this deal. And if you're buying or selling a house, it's a standard contract, and then the special conditions are they'll leave the sofa and they'll fix the living room windows and things like that. So here, the special condition is about the reverter provision. We had, I thought, a pretty constructive conference call a couple of weeks ago about how to arrange these reverters and be able to do them with the minimum of transactions back and forth. And one of the ideas was, well, the school district puts a reverter on and transfers it to open space with a reverter and then back. And where we came out was we think that we can have a single transfer from the school district to the city containing the reverters in the appropriate order for the school district and for open space. And we got the parties from the school district and open space, the attorneys anyhow, to say yes, they thought that would work, and left it on me to create that language, which I'm doing. And that language will then get embedded in the deed that transfers the property from the school district to the city and implements these reverter requirements. And as well said, the Town Center Park reverter then gets moved. And that's a classic thing that the Jefferson County Open Space is actually pretty flexible about doing when you need to acquire open space funds or support for a given property. You know, they require that there be a reverter when you're going to do that, but they're also pretty good about allowing you to move reverters around in order to, so long as their position is maintained, they're fine with that. And so that's the structure we've agreed upon and that I'm working on to inject into the contract, which you'll see soon, I think.
Yes, it's actually scheduled for, I think, March 25th. If we get it through and finalized by then, it can always move to another meeting if we need to, but we're shooting for March 25th.
Yeah, and I don't have any trouble thinking that'll take place.
Yep. Sam, did you have anything to add to the conversation?
No, I think you've done a very good job.
Thank you.
Okay, questions? Councilor Dozeman.
Not really a question, just a comment. I really appreciate staff and the Jefferson County School Board having these conversations and partnering in this manner. I think one of my biggest concerns, just following all the school closures and various cyclical conversations around that over the last decade, was that we wouldn't come to an intergovernmental agreement or a memorandum of understanding that would, equal the amount of investment that we're putting into somebody else's building. So the fact that it's becoming our property and going to remain parkland for the purposes of activating that corridor is wonderful and has absolved any concerns that I had, and I'm really happy to see this move forward. I know this has been a major undertaking, and so I just appreciate staff working with all of the community stakeholders and just really coming to a place where this was feasible. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I don't have a question either. I actually just wanted to say that this deal has kind of gotten better and better and better every single time it comes back, you know, whether it be the financing ways that, or the way that we financed it, or this. I'm grateful to Jeffco and to the staff for doing a great job putting this together, and I agree with the way that it's structured as far as Jeffco getting the park back before. So, great, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. And maybe Mr. Dahl could help me understand a little bit more about the role that Town Center Park plays in this reverter action.
Sure, you want me to start?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so Town Center Park was developed actually as one of the city's first urban renewal projects when the Safeway shopping center was redeveloped many, many years ago. The idea at the time was to put the park in the middle of that shopping center, which at the time might have been a good idea. It just never really worked over the years. It became kind of a dangerous spot, actually. So we've decommissioned it. But there was open space dollars that were used for the either the purchase or the maintenance or construction of the park. So that's where the Jefferson County Open Space requires that there's a reverter put on it because the money comes from the Open Space Fund. So we have to continue using that as a park. Again, we decided to decommission it. The county has agreed to allow us to move that reverter to another park. Their main goal is that their inventory of square footage of parkland never decreases. So it's actually increasing with this move to the green. So I'm not sure if that answers your questions, but.
It does, and then can you, there was mention of Town Center Park being sold.
Yes, so that we'll have the ability to sell the park then, and we can use, as long as we're encouraged, I don't know if it's a mandatory from Jefferson Open Space, but we can put the money from that sale into the green.
And when we talk about selling Town Center Park, it just selling it on the market, or anybody in particular?
We've had a couple different interested parties looking at it, but we'd have to, when we're ready, we'll come back to council and have a discussion on that.
It's not the best analogy, but you can think of open space reverters in the same way as you think about a deed of trust. You know, when you buy property and you don't have the money in your back pocket to buy it, you borrow money and the bank gets a deed of trust to kind of secure their investment in your land. And Jefferson County Open Space has invested in the form of dollars, money in Town Center Park, and so that investment needs to continue to be secured with some piece of property. And you can move, as you sometimes move deeds of trust, you know, you switch out the property that's the subject of a deed of trust. That's occasionally done. And so the same thing's happening here. The analogy isn't exact, but I think it helps you understand kind of what is the interest of Jefferson County Open Space, and another way of thinking about the reverter as the instrument by which they kind of maintain their security and their investment in you, having given the city money to do park things. So.
Thank you. Councilor Hulteen.
Thanks, I was just gazing at the design. Councilmember Larson took my big question, which was just around the sale of the town center and how that could be used towards the green. And I guess maybe a follow-up to that, you know, we're going through a value engineering process. How do we measure potential revenue to go towards the investment in the green versus the value engineering? So, like, if we've got the additional revenue, we're not overvalue engineering like this significant investment. So I'm just sort of curious how you're sequencing that
Yeah,
type of.
exactly. I would not like to value engineer if we didn't have to, but as you saw in your memo, there's about a $1.8 million deficit right now on the funds we have, but Brandon Altenberg is doing an amazing job of finding funding. And we also have other opportunities if we can't value engineer enough. The Conservation Trust Fund budget and open space budget will have additional funding available in '25, which we could also put towards this, which we haven't budgeted yet, obviously. Also, we've been talking about, I haven't verified this with bond council yet, but I believe the 2J funding would be eligible for this since it is streetscape improvements on a major corridor. So we could use some of that, I believe, also.
Okay. Well, I'm just really excited. I just want to thank you, Patrick, and all of the staff and the district for making this work. It means a lot that it's actually going to be the city's park and not something that we're borrowing, but rather something that is ours to continue the legacy that we learned more about tonight. So really appreciate all the hard work that went into negotiating that deal. It sounds as complicated as anything we've seen come forward to council since I've been here. So thanks for all your work on that.
Thank you. Counselor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple of questions I have on, so with the open space reverter moving to this property and it being a larger piece of land, if for any reason in the future we decide to decommission this as a park and want to move that reverter somewhere else, would it have to be the same square footage?
I don't think they look at it by square footage.
Okay.
As I mentioned, their goal is to make sure that their inventory, overall inventory in the county doesn't decrease, but I don't think they're going to look at it apples to apples like that.
And I've had experience with them in other places. They're pretty flexible around that. It doesn't have to be exact, so long as, you know, in the main, their program is roughly the same. So
Great.
that's better than a bank would in moving a deed of trust. You know, you would need real exactitude, and that's where their analogy breaks down a little, and they're a good partner to work with.
Okay, and then do we have estimated costs on the site survey and the plat and the titling that that the city will be responsible for according to the contract?
Yeah, we don't. Mr. Dahl's office, paralegal, is doing that for us, so he's going to do it for free, I think he told me.
Yeah, we'll give you a great rate on that, Patrick.
It'll be minimal.
Yeah,
We don't
it's
have
not
exact numbers.
much,
It's,
no.
yeah, that, couple thousand.
Title work is just a couple, you know, the title policy and all that. So it's minuscule in comparison to the rest of the project, certainly.
Super. I'm super excited for this to happen and for us to be able to have ownership of this property. So thank you.
And I'll give Ms. Hoppy some props here. It was actually her suggestion to ask the school district to deed the land in exchange for the city paying for the parking lot. So thank you, Ms. Hoppy.
I had a question on the period of performance. We've got, it looks like 90 days to get it platted and all approvals. Is that a realistic time frame that we're looking at?
It's 90 days from when the contract is signed, which we're shooting for March 25th. So it'll be 90 days from then. And yeah, we believe the plat work has started already. Yep.
Okay.
All right, that's the end of June.
Yep.
It's really just plating work as opposed to, say, rezoning or something that's a little
Okay.
more subjective.
And
So-
we handle all of those approvals
Yeah.
in-house?
Yes.
We don't have to
Yeah.
go anywhere else to get approvals?
No.
And just a little assurance on the time to build the parking lot. 60 days, sound pretty good? Okay.
Well, the good news is with that, we have, as Mark mentioned, we have a contractor on board already, ECI. They're one of the best for these types of projects. And so they've been part of the design process for the last several months. They've been at every meeting. They can be staged and ready to go well before June 1st. So it's not like they're going to come in on June 1st and then take a month to get started, right? So.
We just finished, this last summer, we did work in association with the city of Arvada at the Myers Pool project. Part of our property became parking lot, and they built 162 spaces in 2 months.
Okay.
So
Good.
it can be done.
All right, good. Do we have consensus to move this project forward? Sure looks like we do. thank you very much for coming tonight. We look forward to working with you and getting us a new park. Outstanding in the field. Okay, we will now go to agenda item number 4. This is a discussion about a resolution in opposition to House Bill 24-1152, ADU policy preemptions. Mr. Goff.
Shoot. There it is, okay. So, the mayor and who is on our policy committee at CML, correct? And CML had requested that we, city council, consider a resolution in opposition of this bill that deals with accessory dwelling units. As you all know, we've passed legislation here in Wheat Ridge based on a lot of public outreach over the years on how we wanted to move forward with accessory dwelling units in Wheat Ridge. The biggest, I think, concern that CML has and that potentially we have as a city, if this bill passes, it would override the city's decision to require homeowner occupied, has to be in one of the ADU or the main residence, right? So CML's primary reason for opposition of this bill is its preemption of local land use decisions. So Mr. Mayor asked to bring this forward for City Council to consider this. So do you want to take it from here, or?
You know, I think this not only local preemption, but I think it also really takes out of our hands the details of being able to regulate this type of zoning use. And I think we've spent, 6 years, in the process of reaching out to our citizens and crafting policy. And I think we craft better policy on a local level than we do at the State House. And this is not the only bill that's coming through the State House that has as its basis that the state has a better idea of how to construct local affairs and than we do in our city. And I certainly appreciate the goals that the governor and members in the legislature have to create more housing, more affordable housing. And I think our city is really kind of on the cutting edge of doing that in-house, and I think that we should stand up and fight for our rights to do that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So, any questions? Councilor Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As somebody who spends a lot of their day tracking what's going on under the dome, and in fact, the bill I've been working on, I think, is dying. A sad, slow death this week. But I want to separate my comments from this particular proposal in that we, as a council, don't really have any particular methodology for what bills come to us for consideration on taking a position on. It tends to be a little bit of a ad hoc, response to, when it's asked of us from a trusted partner or an organization that we're a member of. And, and there are a lot of bills this session that, could be coming here. And so I just want to, I guess, bring forward the conversation about, what I find myself wondering what are our parameters for consideration of taking legislative action, and how do we, contemplate like our positions on it, taking oppose versus suggesting amending when we've been like leaders in doing good policy, and also supporting certain bills. I know Councilmember Ohm and I have been tracking and feeling a lot of concern around the proposal for short-term rental properties to be taxed at commercial property rates. I think that would work against our good policymaking we've done here, and I think would actually end up working against our affordable housing fund that is generated through our short-term rentals. So I want to bring forward that I would feel a lot more comfortable as these bills are coming through the session if we had some framework of what is the criteria we're using as a body for consideration taking position on bills. And so I wanted to introduce that conversation because that feels important to me, because I know there's more bills coming. There's a transit-oriented communities bill, there's a smart growth bill, there's a park and reform bill, there's a lot of bills. So I'm just, I am interested in, you know, what is our framework for it, so that we've got some consistency, and also wanting to be mindful that if we, you know, we can understand in this room the premise of taking a resolution in opposition to this ADU bill, but will it be confusing to our community when we're opposing something that looks like it's trying to promote ADUs when we've just spent a couple years trying to encourage them? So I just want to introduce those and would welcome thoughts from colleagues on that.
You know, just to kind of respond to that, you know, I think it's, you know, it may be a great idea to have to sit down and have a more organized discussion about how we want to think about the legislative process and how we sort of support bills or don't. Or we're a member of CML, and in great measure, I think our interests align with CML with respect particularly to local control and preemption by the state of things that we believe are constitutionally our right to do. The other challenge that we have, as you know, is that these bills hit, you know, they hit like, you know, skaters on a skating rink. I mean, they are here, and then they're at the other end of the rink in no time flat. So you have to sort of balance your ability and desire to really thoroughly vet these things and vet a position if you want to, and still be at the table, you know, before the stage has left the platform. So, but I appreciate your comments. Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. One thing I was looking at after that conversation with Councilmember Holteen was there was another city, town in Monmouth, that actually they have a regular, at every study session, they have a legislative, I guess, kind of a pulse. I wonder if that's something that we could incorporate into our study sessions. And it doesn't need to be a long chat, but just like, hey, by the way, these are some, you know, legislative issues that we really need to be thinking about. And, you know, is there just a real quick kind of consensus of like, hey, do we want to look at opposing this bill? But it'd be something that would be just at, say, like the study session. So like every 2 weeks, take a quick pulse. Here's the things that are coming up, and then we would have a longer runway for some to consider opposing it. And at that CML conference that you and I attended, Director Mikulak had said that the ADU bill, the city of Wheat Ridge is 80% compliant with it, and that we all know that the one thing that we talked about early on was having the home ownership. And in my opinion, I thought that was a good thing to try that out. We can always peel that back, but the question I would have for our attorney is, and maybe I already know the answer, is to what degree should we allow preemption, you know, or tolerance? You know, 0 is a little okay. Is it a slippery slope?
Well, the answer is 0, and it is a slippery slope. I mean, seriously, after spending the 6 years I spent at CML as their attorney, you know, it is a constant battle. And I will tell you that so often preemptive bills suggesting preemption at the state legislature are not ones that went through an interim committee over the summer where they thoughtfully talked about whether this should be a statewide program and what are the considerations for making sure it's good for all the jurisdictions in the state. Absolutely not. Much more often, it's a project in Swink, or a project in Northglenn, or a project in unincorporated Routt County, that has irritated or upset the neighbors or that jurisdiction in some way. And that is brought to the local legislator, who brings it, who asks the legislative council to draft a bill preempting that city from doing that. And I'm not exaggerating. So I give you that background as the foundation for the answer to the question, which is on preemption. And there's some state thought, I will admit, going into this bill, but I don't think there's a lot of, and there wasn't, a lot of engaged discussion with locals at the county or municipal level about how do you exactly administer ADU programs, and what's working and what isn't. You know, that would be how you develop a state program that might have preemptive elements, and you go, okay, we might still not like it, but we understand that there's real thought behind it. So it's very difficult, I think, to say, okay, we'll accept the preemption on owner occupancy, but, you know, reject other preemption, or that's okay. Because in the end, and I'll shut up with this, in the end, local control means that, and you get to decide, and whether owner occupancy is important here, I think, is a fair local decision to make. It is not a decision that you can make or should be making at the state level. Because each community is different. Each community feels different about owner occupancy. If you're a mountain community that's a ski area community, you don't care as much. Our firm represents some ski area communities, and their viewpoint around owner occupancy is very different. And it can be, it's allowed to be, and it serves their interests properly. Owner occupancy here, requiring it as opposed to not, really is responsive to what you heard, I think, from your constituents. And so, sorry for that long speech, but really, you know, preemption, yes or no, is that kind of broad a discussion, and it has those elements. And when we see preemptive bills from the legislature, very often they're not brought with the idea that this is good for everybody. They're brought because somebody wants this particular thing. Yep.
Councilor Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do definitely agree with Councilwoman Hulteen about maybe having a more robust process around what we bring forward, that we're going to, you know, if we're going to sign resolutions and send to the state. There's different ways we can do that. I like Councilman Ohm's suggestion. We could also move the legislative update into earlier in the year, perhaps. And so I would like to see that. I would like to see us have some sort of formal process around that. As far as this goes, you know, I'm okay with it if we could somehow say something, if we could amend it to say that we're opposing it unless amended to allow home ownership or property ownership, property owners on the property with ADUs. So because that was so important to our community when we were doing ADUs, and I know that it's not best practice. I know that there's several different reports out there that say forcing to have property ownership on the property for an ADU is not a best practice at all. However, for the city of Wheat Ridge, we feel like that's the best practice for our citizens, and it hasn't been that long since we've passed the ADU, and I don't think that the temperature has really changed much on that with our citizens. I would not want to just necessarily say, just send one and says, nope, we're against it, vote no on it. I would prefer that we say something that says, we would like you to amend it in this form.
Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I was going to have the same suggestion that Councilor Hoppe did. We have our legislative forum, I think, scheduled for March 18th, which is not next week because most of us will be in D.C., but the following week. I don't know if we can move that up. I don't know if that works with CML and those people to move that up. Not obviously this year, but in the future.
In next year's. I think we could always move it up, sure. I think the reason we go a little bit later is there's not a lot known in January and February. And so we're talking a lot of hypotheticals. Usually in March, you really know a lot of the meat that's going on. I think if we want to have a discussion about how we're going to make decisions as a council, that could be done in a study session this summer, right? In
Yeah.
preparation for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's other things we could do. But the mayor's correct. I mean, the bills change hourly, and I don't think bringing an update to every council study session would be quick. We could try it, maybe if it's just one or two bills, but they're complicated. It's hard to explain. It's hard to understand half the bills. So we can do anything you guys want. It's to Ms. Holteen's point, it is we don't have an internal process. Our process is to rely on CML. That's our process right now.
Yeah, for me personally, I don't mind moving this up and having that conversation separately. But for this bill and pretty much any other bill that's ever going to come up that exempts home rule, I'm a no. And amend it or whatever, it still is going to exempt our home rule, and I'm not okay with that. So I say that we move forward with this resolution. But in moving forward, I do believe that, and I don't know, when do most of these bills get passed, or do they? I know but when is this schedule? I know
Yeah,
it's really
that's
late.
different too. I mean, the session is typically over the first week or two in May, first or second week. So a lot of them go to the very last day.
Yeah.
It just depends. A lot get introduced at the very last week. I don't know if this one, it just really depends on the topic.
Right.
Yeah, things do start to accelerate in March, and bills, as was noted, start dropping out. They start getting PI'd, postponed indefinitely. They get behind another big, the budget or whatever. So it could move quickly, or not, and it could be one of these last-minute deals where they put Band-Aids on it and 3 days out from the end of the session to get it approved. It may well be that, because I think it's an administration-supported bill. It isn't, it's not a real small constituency behind it, so it may live for a while the administration tries to figure out, the governor's tries to figure out how to get it over the finish line.
And that is exactly why it's a no. Because we put 6 years into what we did, and they're putting 3 months into what they're doing. So maybe, and only doing what they can get past. So I'm a no. But I do think that we should look at a process, but not every week, not every month, maybe quarterly or something like that, or once a year right now is fine for me. But maybe moving it up a little sooner so that we can see some of these things a little bit earlier in the conception, and then tackle them a little bit easier. Thank you.
Councilor Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate this coming forward and us having this conversation and the stance that you've taken. I think the home rule municipality and the responsibilities, within local control are vastly important, as our home rule municipality. And so I welcome a broader conversation of how to address issues, whether we want to oppose or support various ones. Although since I've been on council, I think what we've been doing has worked. Partnering with CML has been wonderful. I think March is actually kind of an appropriate time to have that legislative update, because so many bills do die. And if things come up like this, for example, where we need to take pretty immediate action, I feel like we've done a pretty good job at handling that, as opposed to having this really robust process to kind of, I don't know, follow the exemption instead of the rules situation. And I'm definitely a no as well. I agree that we've given a lot of thought into how we've addressed zoning, particularly short-term rentals and ADUs. And I am somebody that doesn't believe in owner occupancy when it comes to ADUs. However, I think that was what was palatable for our community to get that legislative policy passed. And that was a compromise that we came to after many discussions, robust public input process, and engaging those stakeholders, and that's what works best for our community. And we know that because we went through that very robust process. And so I think anything that encroaches on home rule municipality, we need to take seriously, because I do think it is a slippery slope, and it undermines our power and control as a legislative body at the city level. And so I'm definitely in support of a resolution against this, and I also am very grateful for CML and their continued partnership. So thank you for serving in that capacity, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Hulteen.
Thank you. I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I want to clarify a couple things. I'm asking the question just in anticipation, and that I know for a fact there is at least 3 or 4 more home rule bills coming. So I think maybe the question I'm posing is, do we want to just take a unanimous opposition to bills that are threatening? I'm not making a case that we want to try and like get slippery slopey on the home rule thing, but we could be having this conversation every study session for the rest of the legislative session. And that's why I'm asking for some discernment about how many times are we going to have a conversation like this. So I guess maybe what I'm proposing is, if we just had a consensus conversation that any bill that's coming through the legislative session that we feel is a threat to the home rule value that we as members of CML are behind, that we could reach a consensus that we will oppose those bills. I'm just trying to be efficient with like how much of our time in the space are we spending talking about what's going on under the Capitol, especially since it changes so quickly and in real time. And I also think that may also aid us to not get in a situation where we are being confusing about our positions on ADUs in a way that we have to recognize a lot of our constituents may not be below the 10% of what it is we're talking about. So I'm just trying to figure out like what are efficiencies that we can do with our legislative voice. And then I also just want to mention, I am the vice chair of CC4CA's policy committee, and they lobby on our behalf too. So I just that's part of why I think coming up with how are these constituency organizations that we're engaged in and taking leadership roles in, how are we contemplating, those interactions, because state policy does affect us here. And I think we could do an interesting approach in which maybe prior to the legislative session, we identify the priorities that we think have the most impact here, whether it's home rule, affordable housing, homelessness, community policing. Like, we could create some framework for a legislative session that would help sort of guide some of that. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that I think this conversation, just because I happen to know what else is coming down the pike, maybe it would just be better for us to come to a consensus about opposing bills this session that are a threat to the home rule charter that is at the core of who we are in our membership in CML. And then we don't have to get in the slippery slope of like some of the other things. So I guess maybe that's a proposal out on the table for consideration.
Thank you. Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree that 8 council members are going to have 8 different opinions on a lot of the legislation that's out there. And I think it's important for, as a council, for us to put that out in front of the group. There are a number of, as a member of different interest groups, I follow different legislation regarding different parts of what our state legislature is looking at. And while a lot of it may not necessarily interest the council or even the majority of the people in our city, they are things that concern the interest group that I belong to. And so I think it's important for those sort of things to be discussed and those sort of things to be knocked around. We get the CML every week. I get a number of other legislative updates, things that kind of catch my eye, and it's like, this may be of interest to a wider audience, or For example, as a member of my homeowners association, I am in discussions with the management company that works with us, and they hire a organization to do their representation on, in the state capitol. So rather than me calling up Representative Duran or calling up Senator Danielson, I talk to the people that are in contact with our lobbying firm, and then they bring their concerns up. So I think it's important for us to understand that everything, not everything, but the things that we think are important, for example, this particular bit of legislation, that it goes through sort of the structure that's already in place. In this case, it's the Colorado Municipal League, and that they represent our interests, and that they understand that our interests are in local control. And it often matches up, but maybe not all the time. So again, I think it's important for us to highlight the things that concern us as a council, and also to make, or to make aware of our concerns through the organization that does our representation in the Capitol. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with Councilor Hulteen on this. Maybe making a resolution opposing home ownership or home rule, preemption to home rule is maybe a better way to go than opposing this bill specifically. I don't know if that might be a way to go, but what happened last year was there was one bill, right? It was 215, Senate Bill 215, that had everything in it, and a bunch of us were in DC like right as that dropped with every other legislator in Colorado, and they were pissed, to be nice about it, and rightfully so, because it essentially says we don't know what we're doing here, and I feel like in Wheat Ridge specifically, we've set an example for a lot of the region on how to do this stuff. So I would be okay if we wanted to look at that. But I agree, what happened last year was one bill, and then they broke it up into several different bills to try to attack on multiple fronts. So, I mean, if we just do a resolution opposing all preemption to home rule, I don't know if we can do that or not.
Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. One quick question for Jerry. Didn't every elected official, didn't I take an oath of office to protect the Constitution, the city charter, which would have been home rule city? And that would...
Fundamental to that oath, in my opinion, is the city's home rule charter, and so many of the ordinances, et cetera, that are written under that charter exercise that home rule authority in a way that's different than the state statutes, and that's what the voters of the city wanted when they approved the home rule charter. So it's not just that it's a good idea today, but you know, that's one of the founding principles of the city now. So yes.
Thank you. I think I definitely support Councilmember Hulteen's point of we have so many important study session issues. I think if we could, I think it would, that I'd like to get to, and we'd all like to get to, just to, you know, make things move faster. We just all agree that if it's something that is in conflict with preemption of home rule city, it's, you know, it's a no. Or amend it. You know, we should be aligned with CML, and on the ADUs it's opposed unless amended. That's the oath we took. Thank you.
Thank you. This bill was drafted with the recommendations from CML, right? I mean, going through the position papers.
Yeah, I think they took some of their amendments, but not this one. I mean, it's not a CML drafted
No. it's not
bill.
CML.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Counselor Snell.
Thank you. On that, I'm newer to CML, and I'm reading through the document that's at the end of our packet, and it says oppose unless amended. Does CML automatically produce a, request for amendments? Or is that something that we would be able to have input on and say, "Hey, we would like these amendments, we're going to oppose this and these are the amendments that we would like to see"? Or how does that work?
Yeah, we can definitely suggest those as a member of CML. Again, the policy committee that has representation from all the cities, all the members, CML staff brings these issues to that committee to ask, do you support or oppose at the very beginning of the legislative session, which they create a policy agenda, which they have in their priorities this year, or water and fire mitigation, and they have a whole list of things. That's something we could bring forward to this council. It's like, do you support all these priorities? But yes, amendments can be added suggested by any member that goes through CML, and then the policy committee is the one that tells CML staff pose unless amended, or just pose outright, or support. Yeah.
Well, they recommend it to the board, and the board makes the decision.
The board, yeah, which is comes out of the policy committee, right? The board, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks for that. I apologize for that aside. I am in full support of Councilmember Hulteen's idea for just a more robust discussion on bigger issues coming from the legislature. So thanks for that little backstory. Appreciate it.
Okay. Do we have consensus to move this bill forward to our next meeting?
I have a quick question. Would we, so what I was saying is that I would like to say that we're requesting that they amend it. So would we change a little bit of the language saying we oppose unless amended?
Yeah, you can if you want to.
So
It's up to you.
opposes HB 2452, 1152, unless amended to remove state preemption of local control of local zoning ordinances, or Mr. Attorney, where are we going there?
Yeah.
That would work. A narrower version of it would be oppose unless amended to remove the preemption of local requirements for owner occupancy, which is the thing I understand that bothers us most, but you could generalize it as the mayor described, that would clearly cover that, the local requirements for owner occupancy and anything else in the bill that was violative of home rule.
Well, let me sort of speak to that. So if they through other amendments say, well, let's throw no occupancy limits in the bill. Let's throw no parking requirements in the bill. I think the bill also talks about setbacks from other structures and setbacks from property lines. Those sort of kind of the more finer details. But there's a lot of it's not just owner occupancy of one of the units.
So what if we made a resolution along the lines of what Councilwoman Hulteen was talking about, where it says like where in the whereases it says we don't support any House bills that take away home rule. And then in the underneath the now therefore be it resolved, we can say now therefore be it resolved, we are opposing House Bill blank blank, whichever House bill it ends up being that we end up opposing. So that then we have one that's kind of a general, but in the end is where we say, and we're opposing this particular House bill.
Well, I thought we were doing that in the bullet or number 2.
I guess I'm just
We
trying
oppose
to.
HB 241152 unless amended to exempt, or,
If I may.
go ahead, you may.
I think what Councilmember Hulteen is suggesting is that the general opposition by the city to preemption of home rule authority be placed as another whereas in the whereas sections of the resolution, and then that gives you the platform to say in the now therefore operative sections, for all these foregoing reasons, we oppose 1152 for the reason that it preempts local authority.
Yeah, I'm
And
just
you
trying
can
to.
stop there.
I'm just trying to thread the needle between the conversation that has happened in the room about how it sounds like there's a consensus for us to have a standard we oppose if it's, against our home rule. And that kind of gives us like a boilerplate for then anything else that comes up in the future that is, against the home rule. And that's all I was trying to put together.
Okay, so another whereas. Counselor, when you're done there.
I'm making quick notes. So to be another whereas in the right place, we can figure out where that right place is, that whereas the city council opposes the preemption of home rule authority by the legislature, because that's your, and then in the now therefore, you can do one of two things. You can leave it the way it is. For these reasons, we oppose 1152. Say no on this legislation. You could do a little less and say we oppose 1152 to the degree it preempts local authority, but you've kind of done that in the general position of whereas, and that gives you the platform to then on a bill-by-bill basis oppose bills. And so then I don't think you need to change paragraphs 1 and 2 of the now therefore part of the resolution if you say in the whereas the city council opposes the preemption of home rule authority by state legislation, period.
Counselor Hulteen.
Thank you. So I think we're getting close. So my recommendation was that what we're doing is a resolution that is primarily authorizing our representatives, through representation on the policy committee at CML, that we are giving authorization that we are taking a position that we will oppose any bill that preempts, and for that to be the leading. And I think this is where we're getting. So this is, instead of coming forward with a resolution in opposition to accessory dwelling unit preemptions in House Bill 241152, we are bringing forward a resolution in opposition to any bills in legislation, or the 2024 legislative session that takes away our home rule. And the whereases are around that. And if we do that, then does that give the comfortable authority to you as our policy that we don't have to bring every one of those bills back here for
Sure.
discussion?
I think we could incorporate it into the bill as Mr. Dahl has sort of indicated.
Okay, I'm just trying to get away from this like resolution and I'm very sensitive to looking like we're opposing accessory dwelling units.
Okay.
Because I think that is, we have to remember, a lot of our community is at the 10% understanding of what we're talking about. And so I think what's the stronger thing is that we're opposing bills that threaten home rule. So that's just what I'm suggesting, is that we bring forward a resolution that we as a council are unanimous or supporting the authority of our representative to register an opposition in any bill that hits that criteria. And
So
then
it's-
we could say in there, like, for example, I just want it to be a little bit more buried and not the lead, because I just don't want to create this. We've also spent 2 years talking about affordable housing. And a lot of these bills, the reason the governor is pushing this out a lot is that he's trying to augment opportunities for affordable housing. And I don't want us to get caught in confusing situations where we've just spent 2 years and I think we're leading regionally on our work here. And I just don't want to be us taking positions on bills that seem to be confusing to the good work that we've done here for people who aren't going to get down into the nuance of why we're taking those positions. So that's part of, I'm trying to give us good cover there so that you can have the authority, Mayor, to represent our position
Okay.
with our lobbying.
Well,
So-
it seems, and I hear your point, and it seems to me like we might be able to add that in the title. Maybe it's a resolution in opposition to the preemption of local control as exhibited in the House Bill 241152. And then you also have it in a whereas later on down the line. Does that help you to get it into the title? So we're talking about opposition to preemption.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to come up with a solution where we're taking one action and this specific bill gets put in there as an example of it, but rather it's a resolution saying, we're just going to oppose all the bills, and it doesn't have to be about this specific bill, but rather, as a seated council, we're opposing home rule threatening bills.
Okay, Councilor Hoppe.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Councilwoman Hulteen. I think if we can keep the title more around what our position is around home rule authority, and then if we specifically have to call out a bill for that, then we can do that somewhere in the whereases, but that it doesn't necessarily go in the title. Is that what you were thinking? Yeah.
No, I think Ms. Hulteen wants a resolution that states that we're against any bill that preempts local control. And then that gives the mayor the authority to, when Monica Duran calls him, which she does, she called us 5 times at breakfast this morning, are you against, is the city against or for this bill? He needs to know. And if we have this resolution that says, yes, this bill preempts local control, so yes, we're against it. So this resolution should
Yeah,
be
like a
redrafted, so it doesn't
boilerplate,
even talk
basically.
about the ADU bill.
Yeah.
It's just a resolution that says we're against any bill that preempts local control. That's what, correct, that's what Ms. Hulteen's.
That's what I'm suggesting, just in part because we will be having
And
this
don't even talk
conversation.
about ADUs in this resolution.
Okay.
Yeah, unless we absolutely have to, but what we're trying to do is give the mayor authority to say, we're in opposition, and not have to get into the nuances of what could be confusing, contradictory things to others.
Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really think we're talking about 2 separate things here. I don't think we should be changing the resolution. I think it's direct. It gets to the point. It doesn't like equivocate at all what we're talking about. Nobody has to interpret it. It simply says, we oppose this bill. And I think that was the intent when it was written. I think adding a whereas describing the specifics of what we're opposed to is good, and it would enhance what we have here, but I don't think we should change it from a resolution that says the city of Wheat Ridge opposes this bill.
I think that's the question on the table. That's, Hulteen's suggesting that, you're suggesting that. What are we gonna do?
Okay, Councilor Hoppe.
Yeah, I disagree. And I really would hate for a resolution to come up for a vote, for me to have to vote no on, saying that the council is voting again on this. But I won't vote on it the way it's written. I like the way Councilwoman Hulteen suggested, and I don't think that we have to specifically call out the House bill number. It doesn't have to have the House bill number to have the strength in the fact that we oppose the preemption of home rule authority. Does not have to have any bill number in it.
Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I 100% agree with Councilor Hoppe and Hulteen. If we do it for this bill, then we have to do it for the next bill and the next bill and the next bill. But if we make one blanket statement, stop touching local control, we're good. So that's what I'm in favor of. So if we can move forward with a resolution that's more general, I would be in favor of that.
Councilor Dozeman.
So I understand where you're coming from, and I agree that a blanket statement would be beneficial, but so long as it directly opposes this bill, I mean, because I do think that not even just the owner occupancy part, but this bill as a whole would preempt local control. Like, I don't feel like piecemealing it and taking it apart and nitpicking at this bill directly is necessary. Like, I do. Any bill that exempts home rule municipality and local control and our power to, whether it's rezoning, ADUs, short-term rentals, whatever, like, we're opposed, and we always will be. And if we have to do it for every single bill, I think we should, because I think that gives it more power, and I think CML is asking for us to oppose this bill directly so that they have more power in opposing it as a body.
Let's see, I've got Hulteen next.
Thanks. So I don't disagree with having these discussions is actually valuable, but we're going to be literally at every study session having a conversation like this, and it will, maybe it just turns into an efficiency of like, yeah, we rubber stamp oppose because it's home rule, and then in that case, we're not actually talking about the nuances of the bill, so I don't understand what the power is of adding agenda items, because there are, I think, at least 4 more bills that are gonna be basically pretty similar to this, and unless we're actually committed to talking to the nuances of the bills and their implications and why we care about anything other than the home rule, then I don't know why we wouldn't do a blanket resolution saying, if at the end of the day, we're gonna just keep saying no because it's home rule, then we're just doing a futile exercise, which to me is not a good use of the civic space. Which is why next year, let's have a conversation about the bills we care about and some of those nuances. But we're halfway through a session, the bills are coming down the pike, there's a lot of them. And we're gonna be taking up a lot of time, and we already have doubled up meetings, and study sessions are precious. So I'm just proposing something that this is a long discussion tonight, but I mean, we are literally gonna, at every study session, gonna be talking about this until the middle of May. So I'm just proposing we take a blanket resolution, so our authority who speaks for us on behalf of us at CML, and then lobbyists go and do their work, and Monica Duran calls us, and that they just keep getting the no. But if we want to have specific conversations about like the ADU or transit-oriented communities or parking reform or smart growth regulations, then let's bring it back. But if all we're going to do is just keep saying no because of the local control, then I just don't understand the exercise in that, so.
Councilor Ohm.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor as far as, you just make it simple. It's like if we say we oppose, it's if they ask me, like, Councilmember Ohm, why would you oppose this bill? And it's like, well, it's because they took out the owner occupied. So then someone says, well, we're gonna whack them all that one, and now we're gonna have something else. Are you okay if we put this in and take that out? And it's just gonna be this constant battle. And I think you just boil the whole thing down, and what is the essence of what are we trying to do? And just make it simple. And it's like, if this has anything to do with home rule municipality preemption, it's a no. You just do that, and for everything. And I welcome other discussions, but I think we should just have a firm stance. This is the oath we took. This is the city we live in. And if you're gonna do preemption for home rule, it's just a no. And I understand the optics of what Councilmember Hulteen is trying to say. We're not against ADUs. We've worked really, really hard. I know Councilmember Dozman had said, how many years did it take to get that across the finish line? And that's whole time, and that's whole time in our study session that we need to talk about those types of issues. And so I'm very much in support of what Councilmember Hulteen was saying, that just, take it at a higher level. And it's like, we're not going to negotiate. It's like, if it's preemption, it's a no. Yeah. Thank you.
Councilor Dozman.
So this would just be for Dahl. Is that a strong enough language? Do you think, like a blanket statement like that, where would it get our point across of any of these bills that are going to be?
Yes, if it's communicated to the legislators that was the discussion here. It's the council's very firm on supporting home rule and opposing legislation that undermines home rule, and then whoever's communicating it, in this case it would be the mayor up through the policy committee to CML, saying, yes, our council took this position, and this position that they took in this revised resolution applies to this bill. And the next bill that comes along, yes, this resolution number whatever applies also to this bill. And it would be, I've been making notes in case that's the version that passes, to generalize it to do that. And CML would be able to, what they would do, having worked there, what they would do would be to put Wheat Ridge in the oppose 1152, is that it?
Yeah.
Oppose 1152 column, because they've got to put you somewhere. In other words, but they would, if you don't want them putting you in that column, you can't really, do either of these resolutions, because it's kind of pointless. Because they want to be able to say to the legislature generally, these are the cities that oppose this. So be ready for that, that when they do an action call out to the legislators later when the thing's getting ready for the floor, and they represent to legislators, these are the communities that oppose this. Even with a generalized resolution, they would list you in the opposed column. And you'd have to be ready for that. If you weren't ready for that, then it would seem to me that neither resolution ought to get passed at all.
Well, and the rubber really hits the road 2 weeks from tonight, when we hopefully will have our representatives, our senator and our representative here in the hall, and we can tell them what we think of these bills that preempt local control. And we have not done that in the past. We sit here like we have dinner, and we're sort of the mamby-pamby, government affairs evening, maybe we feel better that way, but, they really sort of cranked it up last year with 216. Councilor Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think that the issue is that we'd be in the opposed column. I think it's that we don't necessarily want it to look like we're opposing ADUs in general. And so I think that or that we're opposing affordable housing when that comes around, right? So I think that the way Councilwoman Hulteen has described it, I think that's a good way to do it. And then I also want to ask, will we be getting dinner this year? Because I don't feel like we got dinner last year. Can we please get, who's the mayor pro tem? Can we have dinner this year?
Don't even like to come, Ms. Hoppe.
Well, I have to because URA is on that night. Thank you very much. Nice.
So
nice
no, we're not doing
scheduling.
dinner.
If there's dinner, she's coming though.
We're,
Councilor Hulteen.
All right, y'all have your snacks in front of you, right? I eat my dinner here. Every Monday night, I have dinner. It's really good. This is a really valuable conversation, and I actually think it's almost stronger for us just to have a resolution saying, just hard no to home rule. Because then, we can actually say Wheat Ridge has actually taken a hard position across the board. Because otherwise, it's just every little thing feels like an incursion on that. Like, well, maybe if we kind of dress it up this way, or if we do this, and then it's a game, and we've just drawn a line in the sand. And so I would like to. Well, Mayor, it's your proposal that you.
Well, we only have another minute before we're going to take a break. So do we have consensus to have staff bring forward another resolution at our next meeting opposing the legislature's attempts to preempt local control as a general matter?
Does that mean that this resolution is, as it stands now, is?
We're looking for I guess we're going for a substitute resolution.
but if it passes, it'll be
But
communicated
it
that
would be
the city is against
yeah.
1152 for the preemption of home rule.
All right, we have consensus. Counselor, you guys have the.
Yep.
We'll-
Yep, I've made notes as we go along. I've got a version I think will work.
Okay. Okay. Terrific. So, I guess we're going to take a break, either that, or we're going to go to staff reports.
I have nothing.
And now we can go to elected officials. We have about 30 seconds. Any elected officials reports? Councilor Ohm.
30 seconds, you got it.
Well, that's for everybody.
Thank you, Mayor.
So now you're done. 'Cause
So this weekend, I just want to say I went to Legal Pete's. You could see from Wadsworth, that place was busy. It's like a big billboard of what a tremendous value that was with the patio. And not only that, it's drawing people from all over. What I really noticed is I went to the Queen City Collective Coffee, and they said it very clearly, is that has become a catalyst now for that whole development. And so like you see it, when you're driving down Wadsworth, you see Legal Pete's, you're like, this looks interesting, you stop in, you're going to the other businesses. It's great for Wheat Ridge. Still waiting on the lift slow, but the views,
They live slow.
I don't think I could have picked a better place to sit on a patio and it's covered. It's a great place. It's got heaters, so if you haven't tried, check it out.
We should have 2 or 3 other openings
Good.
in a month.
Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. love the Gold's Grocery development, it's doing great. I just wanted to announce, Counselor Weaver and I are having our next district meeting on March 30th. It's at the Rec Center at 9 a.m., and I know Lindsay Reinhardt from Lutheran Medical Center and possibly Greg Moss and a few others will be there to present on what's happening, and Lutheran's got some stuff going on here in the next couple weeks, so that's it. Thank you.
Great. Further elected officials matters. Counselor Hulteen.
Just real quick, I just wanted to thank staff. When we went to the opening of Illegal Pete's, noticed that the bike racks were placed such that if someone parked their bike on the bike rack, they would be blocking the ADA access. And I reached out to staff, and staff reached out to the developers, and they said that they would rectify it. And I just think that that is just what makes Wheat Ridge great, is that we have great relationships with people who invest in us, and we work well to make sure the community works for everyone. So I am looking forward to getting back to Illegal Pete's, because it is good grub, so
Well, hopefully they weren't in-ground mount.
they were.
They were.
They were.
They were?
Yeah.
Oh, well. They're bolted down. Well, bolted down's easier than jackhammering the concrete out and pulling them out. Counselor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to also announce that in District 4, Councilmember Dozman and I will be conducting a district meeting on April the 2nd at Anderson Park in the Anderson Building, and we will have a couple of really hot topics to talk about.
Well,
Thank you.
well, I'm not going to be shamed by not having the public come. So we have coffee with the mayor next next Saturday morning at 9 o'clock at Vinola's. So get there, get some coffee. If you get there early enough, you can have some of the cookies and the salami before the crowd gets there and consumes the consumables.
Salami at 9 a.m. That sort of sounds, those
All
are two
right.
of the food groups.
Anything else? We will not be here next week because many of our members are traveling out of state. So we hope that you all have very safe travels there and back, and be very productive with our federal delegation in the United States Capitol.
Hey, can I say one more thing?
You can say,
Good news. Got an email today. Our $2 million for affordable housing, our congressionally directed funding, is still in the budget. And they're hoping that the House is going to vote on it next week. So, fingers crossed.
It's more than a hope? Yes. Rather than a lick and a promise? Yes. All right. If there's no more business to come before the council, have a good week. We'll see you back.